Our moderator, Betsy Corcoran. Betsy is the CEO of Edsurge, an award-winning go-to resource on education technology. Betsy has also been a writer for Scientific American Magazine, The Washington Post, and Forbes. Come on up, Betsy. Please give her a hand. The next panelist is John Corippo, who is the Director of Academic Innovation for CUE. He is also the creator of CUE Rockstar Camp Series. John has been named a CUE Gold Disc recipient, Madera County Teacher of the Year. Please give John a round of applause. Next we have Aditya Fotedar, who is with the CIO of Nexenta. He's been a CIO for over 18 years. Before that, he was with Dell, and he's worked with many companies across the valley, most of the names you would recognize. Please give Aditya a big round of applause. Next, we have Jean Lee, who is the partner in PwC's People and Change practice. She's a master and passionate about organization change, organization strategy and behavior, facilitation, visioning. You need to come to SVEF a lot more often. We need your help. Please give Jean a hand. Next, we have Randy Phelps, who is the Director of Information Technology Services for Eastside Union High School District. He's been a teacher, a carpenter, a musician, an engineer, an administrator, and many other things. So if you'd like to sing, we have a guitar in the back. Please join me in welcoming Randy Phelps. Last but not least, we have Amy Wong, who's passionate about transforming the way people learn through technology. Currently, she's a Director of Instructional Technology for Cupertino Union School District. And most importantly, she spent 4 years at a small organization called the Silicon Valley Education Foundation as a Director of STEM Integration.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here today. Mohammed, thank you so much for that very kind introduction. And also, I am very thrilled to say that in conjunction with the state government, Edsurge is going to be offering in partnership, we're going to be holding a summit this summer in which we hope to invite every superintendent and some of their key staff in the state to talk about technology, what it means, and how it works. This panel is kind of the feet on the ground panel. We've heard the great ideas about what we'd like to see technology doing and some of the risks in that as well. And I believe that this panel is about how does that happen? One of the things that's been so interesting to me as having spent 20-odd years writing about technology in the workplace and then really spending the last 5+ years writing about technology in education is that there's a difference. We've asked our teachers, we've asked our schools to make a lot of changes. We also need to ask, what are the changes that we're asking technology companies to make? Because schools are different, and they're very different. So those are some of the questions that I would like to get to today. We've had this gracious introduction from Mohammed, so you don't have to kind of go and totally introduce yourself, but maybe what we could do is just kind of go through and tell me one experience, share with us one experience that you have had in implementing technology that kind of changed your point of view about what this means, about what it means to actually put technology into practice in a classroom. Would you like to start?
I'll start this off with some fun. I'm representing the out-of-town guy. I'm from the Central Sierra, so I work in the foothills. If you guys have seen on Facebook where they want to split California into 6 states, the state I would be in would be the poorest in the nation.
We want to keep you.
Yeah, but little trivia, I'm a Palm certified teacher. And in 2003, I had a Palm 1-to-1 classroom in the Central Sierra foothills. And what that brought to the way that my kids learned was amazing. And they couldn't even get on the internet, right? This is years before YouTube. But just for the boy people, being able to type instead of handwrite was such a liberating experience for them. And to be able to print their projects was amazing. And that started about, well, this last 12 years of my journey have been focused around how do I maximize that experience. And that was just if you had a Palm Pilot, anybody? Not super capable compared to some of the new devices, but I saw into what was possible, and I'm just trying to maximize that.
So tell us about one lesson that you've learned as you've tried to implement, as you've seen people implement technology in classrooms.
Well, relating back to the previous panel, there is no technology that keeps kids on task. What keeps kids on task is better lesson design, passion, interest, creativity. Eric was talking about, the not getting into the robo-teaching model where all I'm using technology for is to not have to grade things. For me, it's exactly what he described. It's kids sitting around tablets, deciding things, presenting things, picking them up, putting them down, learning how to present, share ideas more quickly, and having access to the whole world instead of just what's in a textbook.
Right.
Aditya, yeah. So yeah, so I think a couple of things. I've kind of heard the first panel there and could echo with some of the areas there. Technology itself by itself doesn't make or break. It's the how you understand the requirements and you understand the need to position the right technology for the right need.
And stop on that for a moment because it's really important how you understand the requirements and how you understand the needs. So how are we understanding the requirements in classrooms?
I think that's going and listening to the teachers, understanding what's the problems are, what are the barriers to getting the education, how do we get the technology helps you to get the materials into the homes, into the students' hands 24/7, how to architect the course materials in ways that are not possible maybe with non-technological approaches, right? To open up that innovative door for teachers to innovate, right? Not just be frozen to a particular way of doing things, but really to start exploring different ways of teaching that can then be applied to different students differently in terms of their best way of learning, right? So I think those things are the same things that are happening in the business on the enterprise side, and I speak more from a kind of a public-private partnership kind of experience and area. But we see the same thing over there. It's like, how do we have our engineers be more innovative by opening up their capabilities of what they can do, what they can code differently, or they can use different languages, and they can be free to do things differently to create that innovation, right? So it's innovation in education for the teachers and how technology could help, right, drive those things.
Jean, as you have analyzed these things, have you found anything that's different in the approach to putting technology in classrooms than companies?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've recently been getting more and more involved in the mission here with SVEF through PwC and Mark Sweden, and have had a lot of interesting conversations lately because we thought, there's got to be a way to leverage what we do in the commercial world in the education arena. And I'm finding there to be lots and lots of parallels. And I think what it comes down to for me, the lesson that I learn over and over again with my clients is that it's really not about the technology, it's about the people. And more, we look for ways and strategies to focus on the person and how to make them as successful as possible, because people want to be successful. They want to be great in their job. They want to do good work. And I think same with students and everybody who's in this education ecosystem. Teachers want to do a great job. Superintendents want to do a great job. But it's about helping them understand what that is and what that change means and how they can leverage the technology in the best way possible.
Randy, you've been on the other side of some of these questions. You've certainly had companies coming in and talking to you and saying, you can use this great stuff. What do you get from them? What do you need from them?
Well, I've been lucky. I've actually been on both sides of the conversation. I worked for a company that put the eye on the internet for 10 years. So I've been the person talking about what the solution would be. And so to your original question, I worked on a lot of strategic initiatives where the kids would get devices. And I know when I was a first-year teacher in Eastern Kentucky teaching up in the hollers, I knew that if my kids' heads were down, that they were in the off position. And I knew the first thing I had to do, was get their heads up off the desks and somehow engage them. And what I found is that over the years, when I started putting laptops and started putting technology and training teachers and changing lesson plans and getting the teacher away from the front of the classroom to the side, and where they worked as colleagues and friends rather than I'm the authority and you're the person who listens. When you give kids context and when you give them room to grow, they suddenly lift their heads up off the desks and they engage. The thing that I used to tell people when they would come from New Zealand, Australia to come and see the districts that I was working in to see if they wanted to do that there, I remember telling them that I couldn't guarantee that scores would go up, and I couldn't guarantee that teaching would improve, but what I could guarantee the kids would not have their heads down anymore. They may not be doing what you want, but they would be doing something, and that's an opportunity, and I've always been an opportunity person. You just keep that wheel of opportunity spinning, and eventually the kids will grab one and ride it. And that's really what they call it the gamification of education. There's a lot of terms for it. But the key is to keep providing kids with opportunities so that they latch on. Same for teachers. And that's kind of going to be our goal with the training, that we're going to just keep the opportunity wheel rolling so people can grab it when they're ready.
Amy, you've also worked with a lot of teachers. Tell us, how do we keep the teachers' heads up and spirits up as we give them all this new technology?
Well, I think one of the really important things when working with our teachers is to keep them focused on what is it that we want our students to be able to do. It's so easy to get caught up in the next new technology gadget. There are so many apps out on the App Store that it's easy to lose sight of that. And that's where I think a lot of the distractions come in, is because there are just so many different ways that we could be learning information. But we really want to focus teachers on what's the outcome that we're trying to get at. And is this going to be a tool that's going to be a good substitution for what you're doing in the classroom, or are we getting beyond that to really redefining how it is that students are learning, leveraging what this technology has to offer, whether it's being more creative, being able to communicate with other students across the globe, things like that, where technology is really used to its advantage.
And I've got a nice add-on. How many of you are aware that in England now, coding is an official second language all kids will learn, right? And then just what she was saying is that how many kids like Minecraft? Minecraft became the program that all Northern Ireland schools will now have at the middle grades. So that's a nationwide deployment.
Talk a little bit about partnerships. Some of you have been involved with partnerships. Some of you have tried to broker relationships between nonprofit organizations, between companies, between schools. Give me a word of advice. If I'm a school, how do I want to work in partnership, in a healthy partnership with companies or nonprofits? What should I ask for?
Well, there has to be mutual interest.
Mutual. So talk more about that. What's the interest part?
I used to have a boss who used to talk about the radio station WIFM, which is what's in it for me. And even when people claim that they're not subscribed to it, they all listen to it. And so one thing that I found is in partnerships, like, we all have to be responsible, good, moral, upright people, but we also have to work toward our interests, to where that they're mutual interests, where it's a good fit. With great salespeople, they're the best friends you can ever have because they listen to you and they provide you what you actually need, and they tell you when what they have is not what you need at the particular time. Those kinds of relationships, in our relationship with SVEF, these people have become, inspirational to me. When I go back to work, there's a lot of really hard things I have to decide and do at work. But I hear little voices, when I've sat with different people in our meetings with Dave House and with Mark and with Mohammed. Each of them are inspirational in the sense that we do have a common goal, we have shared interests. And when you saw the plan, we did that together. It wasn't that they took a plan and pushed it down on us. We worked on it together, and that's really the key to a good partnership, is that you're actually partners rather than being spoon-fed or having somebody just help you along.
Great, okay.
And it's tough in the foothills because I'm not surrounded by all this industry, but we have local companies that we worked with, and they don't want to see the same thing better. They want to see something else better. And so they don't want to see better mission reports. They want to see something that's different and better. I get that reaction a lot when I say mission reports. But I think it's important to go in with the idea that we're going to change the educational experience, because a lot of times your best business supporters have children, and they want their children's outcomes to be better. So they're not just looking for the same old thing better, they're looking for something new.
Great. I'd love to hear an example. We heard some great examples in the previous panel about what's going on in Eastside. There are other schools in this area that have really done some remarkable things. Milpitas has been doing some great stuff as well. Can you share with me an example of a school that you've been in that has really put all the pieces in place? And Mr. Funk talked about some of the 4 parts that he sees essential. What are the 4 parts that you've seen essential in the schools where you've seen things really working?
Well,
Ready?
Chris stole my thunder because we're at the same place. But I will tell you that in different places within our district, there are absolutely phenomenal things. For example, we have a high school that we started that have kids who had an F, but they weren't behavior problems. They were good kids. They didn't like to come to school and they didn't get good grades. We put them in a school, and those kids are not flunking anymore, and they're getting good grades, and they're graduating, and they're passing their A to G, and they're catching up, and they're using technology in exactly the way we'd like, which is in creative ways, but also in like, I need to catch up. And when you watch the kids work in class, they're not messing around. They're like, if I do these 3 things, I get this credit. I'm getting the credit. And that was an invention that was absolutely fabulous. Is it a technology initiative? Well, they all are. Right? I mean, they all are. That's one. I've got a teacher who wants to turn gaming into an actual interscholastic sport. So they have leagues going, and we've started sponsoring on the weekends, and they're coding, and they're building their games. And I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And that gamification thing, again, those kids are really engaged.
But again, remind us, what are the essential elements? We've talked about infrastructure, we've talked about bandwidth, we've talked about the need for devices. What becomes non-negotiable? What do you need to have in those environments to get those kinds of effects?
If you're familiar with the triangle of Maslow's hierarchy, there's 2 new bottom levels, which are battery and Wi-Fi. Then we work our way up to air and food. It's great to be able to tell Mr. Torlakson thanks for getting us that Common Core money last year, because in the county that I was just in, we went from being Windows XP to having one-to-one take-home iPads for our 7th and 8th graders countywide. We went from having 3 computer labs at a high school to being 1 to 2, and next year 1 to 1. We've revamped our entire wireless setup so it now actually works. So when kids have devices and Wi-Fi, that's the baseline.
How'd you do that? It's hard for me to believe that it happened in one magic wand swoop.
I'm a really good shopper, and we tasked some earlier money that we had, but it was primarily Bonilla that powered that. And then we sat down together and said, if we turn off these servers because we're going Google, how can we take that money and put it towards device refresh? If we turn off our spam filter because we're going Google, how do we take that money and pay it forward? If we plan well and we don't have to hire additional IT folks in the way that we image and distribute, then we don't need to use that money for personnel, which frankly that money disappears every year. It's great to have more people. But again, my thesis is once I have Wi-Fi and bandwidth and devices, then the magic of teaching can start appearing.
One of the most essential elements that I found is professional development for our teachers. That is just absolutely essential. Mm-hmm. If we don't show them ways that technology can be used as a tool to integrate into their instruction, it's useless to them. They don't have that need. They don't see, why should I use this technology? So being able to work with them through that professional development is really essential. And then beyond that, that's also being able to promote this mindset of risk-taking. We really want our teachers to be able to say, okay, I want to try out this new technology tool. Let me try this. I know it might fail, right, but be willing to take that risk.
Right, because
you really have got to, everyone has to be willing to change their mind. Mm-hmm. So my first day when I was at Eastside, we had 1,386 kids, or people, users, that included the offices and everything. 1,386, we have 24,000 kids. 1,386 people were on the network. So I was like, that's crazy. And everyone said, oh no, we're managing it so great. You know, the rules, the policies, they're all working. I was like, like give everyone like the Wi-Fi credentials, like get them on. You know, we've got the filter, we pay a ton to like have this, like turn it on. We run about 17,600 people on the network all day. Now, Ava, you're in the audience, so it's slow some days, but that also allowed us, we're going from 1 gig, which was the goal. We'll have 10 gig pipes, both our backbone, our internet connection, and our wireless will be at 10 gigs next fall. And then we'll add in the part that Sam's going to talk about a little bit about the community wireless, which is going to be phenomenal.
And when I've led IT departments, our motto was always use the whole internet up today because there'll be more tomorrow.
And give me 1 or 2 pulse checks. Okay, if you're going to do a health check, you're moving all this technology in, you're putting all these people on the band on the network. What are 1 or 2 elements that you need to make sure you've got your finger on that pulse, that you've got a healthy implementation, that things are moving along, that you're not going to have parents screaming off the top of their heads at something? What are a couple of things that are absolutely essential to monitor to make sure that you're going to be continuing this growth?
If you're doing it right, you will have some people screaming.
Mm-hmm.
Jean, what have you seen?
It's an
agree.
Screaming is
interesting question
okay.
because I recently had a conversation with you and Chris about taking the pulse of your stakeholders. So again, kind of trying to apply some of the stuff that we do with clients in this environment. And the things would be, you know, like satisfaction. Do you know what these changes are about? Do you know how to use the technology, and are you happy with it? Does it make your life easier? You know, some simple questions along those lines. And if, you know, you get some responses that say, you know what, I actually really don't know what this is all about, then you know that you can do something about that. Maybe there's more training, maybe there's more learning that you can put out there, respond to that. But to me, it's about, you know, satisfaction, and are you able to do things better because of this new change?
So I think what we're talking about is, like, to his point, battery and, you know, the wireless, right? Working your way up.
Until you have that, you got nothing.
By getting what we're talking about right now, getting those basics in place is just like laying out the roads to connect traffic, right? The work starts after that, right? To build the education apps on top of that, to deliver the education, to open up that innovation, of the mindset of the teachers to be able to teach, right? And really take advantage of that 24/7, not just in the classroom, but even outside that, right? One thing which I practice is a kind of, I would say, you know, design for change, because things will change. Teachers will change on you faster than, and actually my users change on me faster than I can even think of it, right? Like our kids change on us before we know it. So you have to design for change, but be able to manage the change. And to your point, which I think she talked about, is how do you have a feedback process into the teachers and the parents and the students to know what's working, what's not working, right? And that kind of will make that engine roll and continue, be a continuous improvement cycle, right?
Without
Not
an
just a
IT
one-time.
department that answers your tech needs as a teacher, you're gonna have a hard time. Communication is critical. Without administrators that are backing up teachers saying this needs to work, you're gonna have a hard time. So there's also that human element of talking and working through. When I do large change projects where we're moving from this to this, I always start with a coalition of the willing. I find a few people that want to change. I build a little fort of happiness around them. And after a while, some of the teachers say, you know, I want some of that. And I say, oh, by all means. And it's a very, very subtle process. It takes about 2.5 years. But if you support people that are doing innovative things and make it clear that this is favorable activity, but you don't have to, they never get a chance to get negative about it. And over time, they see that it works, and they tend to get on board.
Do we have any questions from the audience that we want to include?
Yeah, we do. Now, we did get quite a few questions, but they're hard to all ask. Let me try to give you guys the hardest one.
Thanks, Mark.
How are these boots on the ground folks addressing the how of teaching? Where does pedagogy fit into text integration with academics, right? So how do you bridge that gap, given there's a lot of technology knowledge, but how do you bridge it back to education?
And to put a very fine point on it, which I've heard from some teachers, is Minecraft really got much pedagogy behind it?
No, and that's where the magic of teaching appears.
Okay.
The teacher has to have a mindset. I love Sagata Mitra's TED Talk where he says, you play the role of the English grandmother and you say, that's amazing, what else can it do? So you don't tell kids what they do in Minecraft, you say, we need to learn about ancient Greece. How could we use Minecraft for that? They will tell you.
But talk about this question of pedagogy. How do we make sure that in our rush to make sure all the bandwidth works, and the batteries are there, that we don't lose that part?
It comes back to what is this technology tool doing and what is it for? And really, is it about that technology or is it about what students are learning and what role that technology piece can play? Like Minecraft, like using any Google Docs, like using even just your iPad mini with the camera, like how can you use that for learning? What are all the different ways? Because it's not just, we're not just giving a student a camera and just saying, okay, go have at it. We're scaffolding that knowledge growing.
They go hand in hand. I mean, one of my favorite things that's developing on LCAP, I'm hearing discussion that LCAP plans are going to now be asking for specified professional development, because without that, it can go bad. It really can. You can turn kids off. I've seen classrooms where kids don't want to use technology, and that's not what we're looking for. So the teacher training part is critical. But it's really a mindset shift. We don't have to teach them every app.
You know, there's one critical thing about that I think is important in this, in terms of when we're talking about pedagogical concerns. That is what the computers do that we could never do before. So in our country, we have a Republican form of government where we elect people to vote for stuff. We're moving to an age where we wouldn't have to do that anymore. And that individual, right? So the greatest concern we have in our society today is, how do we protect that individual, right? It's the single biggest thing. Don't worry about ISIS. It's, how do you get to keep being you without someone becoming you? That's going to become the single biggest problem we're going to have over the next 10 years until we can figure out, because retinal eye scanning doesn't work that well. After you're 40, your fingerprints start to go away. That all goes away. So what does that have to do with this? And here's what it has to do. For the first time in the history of the world, we could educate individual kids at the pace that they need to go to. And we have the computational power to do things like predictive analytics, to do examinations, so that as a teacher, I know when I was in a classroom of, in Kentucky, 42 kids, when I had my 42 kids, I taught a group of kids, and I graded a group of papers, and they were a group of 11th graders. It doesn't have to be that way anymore. We can get it down to where people can go at the pace they need to go at. People can learn at the rate that they learn in the way that they need to learn. We have the way to help that. That's never going to take away the art of teaching. In fact, it's the enhancement. It makes the great teacher really great because they have the time to be able to see. What's really awesome is when we finally have tools that tell us what we should do next as a teacher, to give us suggestions. You know, Tommy didn't really get that as well as you may have thought he did, right? Good teachers will do things in the classroom where they'll go, got it? Good teachers will do the thumbs up, not quite, I'm dead, right? That's how we used to do it in the old days. Now the kids can tell you along the way so that they can be quiet about it. The quiet kid is the loud kid now because they can text you, they can Twitter you. So that's what makes it, is there pedagogy behind this? Absolutely. In fact, it's the thing we always wanted, which was Socrates walking around with about 5 or 6 of us, having a conversation and really getting an education. This is the possibility of all this.
So we've heard about some very interesting things, creating a fort of happiness, that our fingerprints may go away after we're 40. Depressing thought. And the power of communication.
Not all the time.
No more
The
privacy.
power of communication, and that maybe sometimes we don't have to be afraid if there's criticism, because we are talking about change, and change is hard for everyone. And last but not least, the power of teachers, and in fact, the power of things like sharing budgets that give them a greater voice in all of the technology that's coming into their classroom. Please join me in thanking a fabulous panel.